like button as you come in the chat. It does a ton for the channel. It does a ton for the video. Say what's up in the chat so you can get a shout out. Let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to share your opinion. I do not block you guys over here. I don't block your opinions. It's I'm not concerned about what you say. I just want you to be respectful. So I know all comments might not come out respectful. That means you got to know how to use tact. I'm not gonna lie. If my moderators catch you being crazy in the comment section, you're probably gonna get blocked or put in timeout. If I catch you, I'm timing you out for 24 hours. And then if Streamlabs catches you, they're just going to delete your message. So that's what I mean by being respectful. You know, keep it cordial. Say what you got to say. Talk your talk. All right, guys. So let's get into it as soon as I can find where I put notes. Yeah, come here, you stole it. Hold on, chat. Maybe my dog stole the remote. Alright, first up we gotta listen to the White House speaker. Gotta listen to both sides first, right? So first up we're gonna go with we got leader Jeffries. So we got Hakeem Jeffries press avail, so we're gonna look at that. He did that about 10 hours ago. And then we have Speaker Mike Johnson, right? So he's on straight shooter with Stephen Smith, but I'm actually going to play no negotiating. So this is him 11 hours ago. Fox Live Now from Fox has that. So we'll listen to Speaker Johnson, government shutdown, day 37. We'll listen to that first. Then we'll go over to Hakeem Jeffries, and then from there I want to listen to something Mayor Giuliani said. That's the former mayor of New York City. Giuliani was the mayor of New York City when I was probably in junior high school, so I do remember him. And then we got Speaker Johnson joined straight shooter with Stephen A. Smith. We got Bill O'Reilly talking about was the blue wave midterm preview. So he's gonna kind of pour water on that hot take about, you know, yesterday's blue wave or the day before's blue wave being a midterm preview. We got shout out to the Young Turks. Nancy Pelosi's retiring, so she announced her retirement. They covered some of that, so we'll take a look at that. And also we got something by Thune and Chuck Schumer. Speak about the longest ever government shutdown. So I kind of got an order I'm gonna go in these. You guys that have been watching me throughout the days of the shutdown, you know I usually do Mike Johnson first, then Hakeem Jeffries, and we kind of trickle down from there. So let's jump right into it. We'll start with Speaker Mike Johnson first. Shout out to Live Now from Fox.
Own a vacation rental? If it's not listed on Booking.com, it's invisible to millions of travelers on our platform. Don't let your vacation rental be invisible. Get seen, get booked. On Booking.com, Booking.yeah.
Guys, hit that like button for me.
Millions of Americans use credit cards to purchase goods every day. The Durbin Market.
Well, good morning, everyone. Joining us this morning for the latest updates, we have some members of the Republican Governance Group, one of our most active caucuses in the Republican side. These are folks among our friends and colleagues, the most productive, most dedicated, most effective members, because they are people who work every day on solutions for the greatest challenges facing our country. And Carlos Jimenez is with us, and Blake Moore, and Julie Fedorchik, and Gabe Evans. Beth Van Dyne may be joining us. I think she had a flight delay. But they've been out in their districts working very hard to help their constituents navigate through the chaos that's been created by the Democrat shutdown. And if you're keeping count, this is day 37. 37. It seems unbelievable to us that we've gone this long. It is officially and shamefully the longest shutdown in U.S. history. Republicans feel very helpless about the situation because, as we've noted, there is really nothing for us to negotiate. We sent them a clean CR, as you know, back in September 19th. We passed it out of the House. It feels like a lifetime ago. But that was a nonpartisan measure. It's 24 pages in length. It has no Republican priorities on it at all. It was merely the status quo to keep the lights on so that the members of Congress, and the Republican and Democrat Party, could work together to finish the government funding appropriations process. And the Democrats tried to turn that into a game. Now, we're gonna give you the latest updates on that and where we think this is headed. But I just first want to address in a bit more detail the current state of our politics. It has been very interesting to us to see all the pundits trying to spin the results of the election on Tuesday. I just want to point out some simple facts here, and as usual, I try to be concise and give you the highlights here. But there's some things that we really need to point out. First, there were no surprises on Tuesday night. Okay, you had blue states and blue cities that voted blue, to the alarm of no one, to the surprise of no one. That was what was expected. It just so happened that New York and New Jersey and Virginia were the states that were in the national spotlight on Tuesday. If the tables had been turned and if the calendar had been different and you had 3 red states, we'd have an entirely different narrative that you all would be writing about. Don't lose the simple facts. Second, the big headline that everyone is writing about appropriately is that the future of the Democrats was set in New York City. A 34-year-old Marxist is now the leader of the Democratic Party. And it is a very dangerous road for them to go down. I want to say this because a lot's been said about the Mamdani campaign. It is very easy to run and win as a socialist, right? All you do is promise everything to everyone for free. What a great message that is. Boy, that really resonates for people who don't study history.
Yeah, exactly.
And while you're making all those promises, you just
they don't know it's horrible.
That they never realize the trap that you're actually setting, the impossibility of fulfilling your fantastical claims and dreams, and the extreme danger and chaos that would result if you ever could. When you run as a socialist, you have to hope that they never
Shout out to Mike Johnson for the word fantastical. I think in the last 4 days, I've heard him use fantastical like 4 times. It's just hilarious to me how the word's so fairy tale-like and he keeps using it.
Understand that this will lead to the inevitable loss of their freedom, their opportunity, and their security.
Fantastical.
The loss of meritocracy and fairness in society. The loss of colorblindness. And the loss of emphasis on character. And the morality and the personal incentive and the common sense that we rely upon to keep a republic in operation. If you run as a socialist, you run on a big list of false claims. You promise everything to everyone and you can't deliver, and if you were ever able to deliver, it will be to the great detriment of the very people that you lured in to vote for you. Third fact about the election on Tuesday night is that the Democrats, and you all are not writing about this, and you should be, not writing enough about it, the Democrats have now set themselves on a collision course in their own tent. If you look at Spanberger in Virginia and Sherrill in New Jersey, they tried to run as moderate pragmatists. That's how they self-described. Yep. But they will be no match for the coming communist wave taking over their party right now. The energy is on the side of the Marxists. Look no further than the top 2 Democrats here in Congress. We've noted this here every day. They had to bend the knee to the socialists. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are both from New York. The top Democrat leader in the House and the top Democrat leader in the Senate, they couldn't get around that. And so Hakeem had to ultimately embrace it. He had to give the full blessing to Mamdani and his agenda. And he co-owns it. And Chuck Schumer flirted with it. He pandered all along. He flirted with that open endorsement till the bitter end, even though Mamdani is an activist against Israel and an anti-Semite. Chuck Schumer is the highest-ranked Jewish official in America, and he couldn't bring himself to disclaim that. And as we've noted here every day, the sole reason for the entire federal government being shut down now, the sole reason for all the American people suffering all this pain and hardship, is because of the fear of political retribution from the far-left activists who run the Democrat Party. That is the motivation for the shutdown. It's never been about any policy issue at all. It was only so that they could show a fight and try to show that they're tough to this rising far-left activist base in the party. The old guard has been repudiated, and the radicals are taking over the Democratic Party. We have evidence now every day. Yesterday, Jared Golden announced he would not be running for re-election in the state of Maine. He's a moderate, and he has no place in his party anymore. And then this morning, you saw the headline. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi has now announced her retirement this morning. That is a very important sign that I hope that you all will delve into. Even the famous San Francisco liberal is not far left enough for the neo-Marxists. We commend her for her services. We all do, everyone who serves in Congress, but there should be a lot written about that. Fourth point I just want to make, in the aftermath of Tuesday, is that off-year election results in isolated places are never indicative of the upcoming midterm election. Don't read too much into that. You shouldn't. If you do, you're going to miss it. The GOP is in excellent position to win big next year. And when I say I'm bullish about the midterms, we absolutely are. And there's a lot of reasons for that. This is not groundless optimism. It's based on facts. The reason we're in such a great position is because we are united. And while the Democrats engage in their emerging civil war, Republicans are going to continue to work and deliver for all the new voters that we brought into the party in last fall in 2024. There was a true demographic shift in that election, as you know. Record number of Hispanic and Latino voters, Black and African American voters, Jewish voters, union workers, urban voters, young people. And while they say that there's this big swell of enthusiasm of young people based on what happened in New York City Tuesday night, I would give to you Exhibit A on our side. Maybe you're not noticing, but the Turning Point events at college campuses all around the country are setting records for attendance. You have hundreds of thousands of new young people weekly coming into the movement that are enthusiastic, young conservatives who are looking for truth, who believe in America's founding principles, and who want to be engaged. And they will be engaged in next year's midterms. The third reason is we got a very favorable map. You shouldn't miss this either. I was very bullish even before the current redistricting battles began. As we sit here today, there are 13 House Democrats sitting in districts that President Trump won. There's another 21 of them in districts he came within 5 points of winning. There's only 3, conversely, there's only 3 House Republicans sitting in districts that Kamala Harris won. That's a lopsided map. And after redistricting, we think we'll net a few more seats, handful, maybe 6 to 8. We're in very good position to make history and grow this majority. And finally, I'll just leave you with this. The reason we're so enthusiastic about running next year is we have a real record to run on. Mondami and Democrats want to talk about affordability. We love that subject. We love it. Look at the facts. I brought some this morning. It's the Republicans who are working every day to make life more affordable for working families. And it's not a talking point for us. We are delivering. After 4 long years of skyrocketing prices under the Biden administration, we had to take over. You don't flip a switch and reverse that overnight. It takes a while to work those policies out of the system and to get the new ones in. President Trump and Republicans are delivering results for the American people that they can see and feel. To date, we've seen core inflation is nearing its lowest level in 4 years. Gas prices have fallen to a 4-year low. Prices for everyday goods continue to decline, and blue-collar workers are seeing the largest increase in wage growth in nearly 6 decades. That's the result of our policies. In Congress, House Republicans are working hand in hand with President Trump to advance his affordability agenda. It is President Trump who ran on that. It's President Trump who's delivering on that. And we are all partners in that new effort to make America great again. It begins with the economy, and we know that. We're laser focused on making a difference in the lives of hardworking American families. Here's another demonstration, the Working Families Tax Cut. It is aptly named. It's the largest tax cut in U.S. history for working and middle-class Americans. You got Bernie Sanders running around. They're talking about the billionaires. It's not this. That's the opposite of the truth. Look at the facts. That was a pretty good one. That bill was written for lower and middle-class earners, and they're the ones that will feel the positive effects going into next year. We included in that, as you know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, real tax relief for seniors. These are the kinds of things that people feel, and they see that we're making good on our promises. We've made historic investments in American energy dominance to drive down the cost of gasoline and groceries. And we're grounding every decision we make in common sense. That's what we restored. That's what we ran on. That's what we're delivering. A return to common sense. Not the woke progressive nonsense that they delivered for 4 years. Not the spending like drunken sailors that drove cost up for everything with inflation. We're restoring common sense, fiscal responsibility. We're good stewards of taxpayer dollars, and we're refusing to cave right now, today, to the Democrats' wild demand to spend $1.5 trillion in new spending. That is taxpayer dollars. That's your money that they want to spend to reopen the government. That's their counterproposal. That's why we're not having a negotiation with them. It's ridiculous. Included in the $1.5 trillion that they want to spend is $200 billion, almost $200 billion, to restore health care benefits to illegal aliens. That is taxpayer money that they want to spend for that. They want to send billions of dollars back overseas for social programs in foreign countries. We're not doing that. They want to give $500 million back to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to prop up left-leaning news organizations. We're not doing that. And by the way, in the middle of all this, they want to cut $50 billion from the Rural Hospital Fund. They can't tell you they care about health care since they put that in their proposal.
Oh, yeah. They're not talking about that.
We're grounding every decision in common sense. The Democrats had their chance. When they controlled Washington, look at the history. Don't forget it. This was just a year ago. You know what we inherited? They left us with a 40-year high inflation, higher taxes and energy prices, and massive instability around the world. And what did they do in June of this year? This is the most recent history no one can forget. They voted against no tax on tips. They voted against no taxes on Social Security. They voted against a larger child tax credit. The Democrats in the House and Senate voted against lower energy prices, against more American manufacturing and jobs, and against lowering health care premiums by 12%. That provision, the cost sharing reduction provision, was in the House version of the Working Families Tax Cut, the big beautiful bill. We sent it over to the Senate, and they worked to strike it out of the bill. Ask the Senate Democrats about that. Right now, they've created another mess. They've created a mess for America with this pointless government shutdown. The Democrats will tell you that they're feeling emboldened. They're feeling emboldened because they had a few blue state election results. It does not change the fact that they have walked their party off a cliff with no parachute and no path forward. The reason we're stuck right now is because of one simple fact. If they vote to reopen the government, the Senate Democrats are afraid that the radicals in their party will say that they caved. They're afraid of the retribution that will come from that. But if they keep the government shut down, they know very well, as we all do, that millions of Americans will continue to suffer as essential services remain unfunded and paychecks to federal workers continue to stay stalled. So our question for Democrats this morning is this: which constituency matters more? The loud radicals in your party or the hardworking American people? I can tell you which side the Republicans are on. 15 times we voted for the hardworking American people. And 15 times so far, the Democrats in Congress have voted for the radicals in their party. It is unconscionable to us that they've allowed it to go on this long. And at some point, all you can do is pray that common sense prevails. And that's what I've been doing a lot of. We hope and pray that there are still Democrats out there. There's just a handful. We need 5 more votes. 5 centrist, common sense Democrats in the Senate to come to those senses and do the right thing. It's time for them to put their country first. I'm delighted to introduce the next speaker, and he's a congressman from Miami. He's a former mayor of the county down there, and he's been in charge. He served as a police officer, but he was the chief of the fire department down there. I mean, the guy's resume is longer than almost anybody in Congress, and as a son of a firefighter, I always take personal delight in reminding everybody he's the only career firefighter paramedic in Congress. He's doing a great job, and he serves as vice chairman of the Republican Governance Group, one of our largest and most active caucuses, I mentioned, and we're truly grateful to have him here to discuss some of these consequences of the government shutdown. Glad to have you. Carlos, come on up. Thank you. Thank you, Rob.
I knew it was Carlos because he had a big smile on his face. All right, so we're going to go back and forth and be bipartisan, right? So let's go over to Hakeem Jeffries. He did a press conference a little earlier today, about 10 hours ago. So who's covering him? Okay, shout out to Representative Jeffries. This is on his own channel, so I'm subscribed to his channel just so I can see the things that he dropped. So let's take a listen.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. Morning.
Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi will go down in history as the greatest speaker of all time.
Oh, God.
Her tenure has been iconic, legendary, historic, and transformational. The incredible pieces of legislation that she has moved into law through her brilliance, her wisdom, and her incredible grasp of how to get things done for the American people is too numerous to list right now, but it includes the Affordable Care Act, the American Rescue Plan, the PACT Act to provide health care to our veterans, CHIPS and Science Act that has brought domestic manufacturing jobs back to the United States of America, and of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, which included the largest investment in combating the climate crisis in the history of the world. As a result of Nancy Pelosi's historic tenure, the nation is better off today than the one she found upon her arrival in 1987. It's been an honor and a privilege to be able to serve with her, work with her, be mentored by her, learn from her, and get things done for the American people alongside her historic tenure as Speaker. This is day 37 of the Trump Republican shutdown. And the position of House Democrats remains the same. We will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. We're ready, we're willing, we're able to sit down with our Republican colleagues anytime, any place, in order to reopen the government, to find a bipartisan path forward, and to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis that continues to crush people all across the country. Tens of millions of Americans who are in the open enrollment period right now are seeing their premiums, copays, and deductibles skyrocket, in some cases, by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. That is unsustainable, particularly in this country right now, which is experiencing an affordability crisis. Life has gotten more expensive under Donald Trump and Republican policies. This is from a group of people led by Donald Trump who promised that costs were going to go down on day one. Costs haven't gone down in America. Costs are through the roof. Housing costs are up. Grocery costs are up. Childcare costs are up. Electricity bills are skyrocketing. And now, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, healthcare premiums are going to drive some people into medical bankruptcy, and tens of millions of folks won't be able to provide a doctor when they need one. That's why we have to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis. And that's why we need Donald Trump to show some leadership. Stop hiding. Show some leadership. Direct Mike Johnson and John Thune, both of whom work for you. Donald Trump is the puppet master of congressional Republicans. Show some leadership. Direct them to sit down so we can authentically enter into a bipartisan negotiation and end this Republican madness now. Questions? Mike?
Mr. Leader, Leader Thune said this morning that the reason that Democrats won't agree to pass the CR that's on the spending before the Senate right now because House Democrats are pressuring Senate Democrats to continue to hold out for political reasons. What's your response to the suggestion that it's because of your caucus that Senate Democrats refuse to support the CR that's been voted down for?
Under the leadership of Chuck Schumer, Senate Democrats have been brave and courageous in standing up for the health care of the American people. The Republican health care crisis is not a made-up thing. It is devastating people all across this country, in rural America, urban America, working class America, small town America, suburban America, the heartland of America, and in black and brown communities throughout America. It's not a made-up thing, the Republican health care crisis. As Marjorie Taylor Greene continues to acknowledge, it's a real thing. The largest cut to Medicaid in American history. 14 million people or so are going to lose their health insurance because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. Hospitals and nursing homes and community-based health centers are closing as we speak all across America, including in Louisiana. Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise could care less. They're doing in their own constituents. These things are happening because of the Republican healthcare crisis. This country actually faces the largest cut to Medicare, $536 billion, in American history. unless Congress acts by the end of the year because of what Republicans did in their one big ugly bill. And now, since Republicans refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are seeing their health insurance premiums skyrocket, making seeing a doctor for themselves, their children, and their families unaffordable. At the same period of time, in these appropriations bills, Republicans are trying to gut the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institute of Health and undermine the ability of everyday Americans to actually receive vaccines. This Republican healthcare crisis is real. That's why House Democrats are standing up for the American people. It's not a partisan thing. It's a patriotic thing. That's why Senate Democrats are standing up for the American people. Not a partisan thing, a patriotic thing. We have to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis. And John Thune is divorced from reality. I mean, it's a clown show over in the Senate. 14, 15 times you bring the same partisan Republican spending bill to the Senate floor, expecting a different result. That's the classic definition of legislative insanity. Doing the same thing over and over and over again, has no ability to actually negotiate in good faith. And this has gone on week after week after week.
Mr. Leader, thank you. Good morning. I understand the Democrats' concerns about health care and the arguments that you've made about that, but do you think at some point with the crisis in the aviation industry, cutting off these flights, people concerned about air safety, air traffic controllers not getting paid, do you think that the air question will pivot some of your members and say, we have to open up the government because we're worried about people's lives?
We want to immediately reopen the government. We want to find a bipartisan path forward to enacting a spending agreement that actually meets the needs of the American people and actually drives down the high cost of living. What about what happened on Tuesday? Do Republicans not understand? They got wiped out all across America because they've made this country too expensive and they failed to do anything about the affordability crisis. And as Democrats, our position is simple, and we're doing this for everybody. Whether you're a Democrat, or Republican, an independent, we're doing this for everybody. We have to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. And we have an opportunity to try to do it with respect to health care. But the Republicans refuse to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. On the aviation safety issue, we need a full and complete briefing so we can understand from the administration what the current status is, what the impact of administration layoffs have been prior to the Trump Republican shutdown, because the administration has been going after the FAA since the beginning of their time in office, since January 20th. And we need to understand how we got to this moment, separate and apart from the Trump Republican shutdown. The problem is it's like impossible to have a congressional briefing with House Republicans on vacation. 6 consecutive weeks they've canceled votes. I mean, it causes you to answer or ask the question, is there such a thing as a 4-ring circus? Because it's a circus right now in the House, in the Senate, across the country with Republicans, and certainly at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Mr. Leader, did the former speaker notify you of her decision to retire, and does her retirement signal a shift in generational leadership for Democrats?
Yes to the first question. To the second question, we are all proud to stand on the shoulders of Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi. It's been a great honor for me to be able to serve with legendary...
Bro, is it just me, or is it not weird that he wants to say her whole entire name? I think Hakeem has a thing for Nancy. Like, why does he have to say her whole entire name? We already know who Nancy Pelosi is. It's just a weird thing.
Members of Congress from the very beginning of my time in office. And that, of course, includes, right at the top of the list, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi, or John Lewis, or Charlie Rango, Elijah Cummings, Eddie Bernice Johnson, John Dingell. We can go through the list. These are legendary members of Congress.
Timmy Obama.
And of course, right at the top of that list is Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi.
Speaker Johnson says he won't even guarantee a vote on the AC issue. Can you react to that?
Well, Mike Johnson has claimed over the last several weeks that Republicans are the party of healthcare. That's a joke. Why does this guy keep lying to the American people? Week after week after week, it's a new story. Because for several weeks, we were told that Republicans had a healthcare plan and that Republicans had planned all along to address the Affordable Care Act issue and the fact that these tax credits for working class Americans, middle class Americans, and everyday Americans are about to expire. And Republicans can't be bothered. This from a group of people who somehow found $40 billion to bail out their right-wing dictator friend.
Somebody, KB said, saying that woman's name like this, are you sleeping with that 80-plus-year-old woman? That's what I'm like, exactly. Like, he literally says it like he's in love with her.
In Argentina, $40 billion to put Argentina first, not America first. Republicans have put Argentina first. And they can't find a dime to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. This is part of the reason why Republicans were rejected all across the country, pummeled, shellacked, beaten down electorally all throughout America because they have failed to address the affordability crisis. And instead, everything that these Republicans do, including their one big ugly bill, is about providing massive tax breaks to their billionaire donors and subsidize the lifestyles of the rich and shameless.
Thank you, Jeffries. With Speaker Mayor Pelosi not seeking re-election, this coincides with Mayor-elect Mamdani in New York City. So as he is on the shoulders of Speaker Mayor Pelosi and looking ahead, how will you work with him to make New York City better?
Well, as I've indicated, it's incumbent upon all of us, everybody in New York City, to make sure that the mayor-elect is successful. People who supported him and people who did not support him. There's a time for politics and there's a time to govern. And when the mayor-elect is inaugurated on January 1st, it's a time to govern.
Just going off of that question, how would you advise the mayor-elect to approach the president in how Trump has been threatening to withhold federal funds from New York? I guess how would you advise him to go about handling?
Yeah, those private conversations will remain private. We are not going to let any toxic president, attack the people of the city of New York.
Thank you, Commissioner. So you're saying that you want a bipartisan deal and you have to address healthcare. I just want to clarify with you then. What you want is an AC accessory extension to be either a CR or a legislation that will get a vote and will pass?
We're not going to negotiate the specifics in public, but as we've repeatedly said, we have to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis, and that begins with dealing with the Affordable Care Act tax credits.
To build up that, would you see, because it seems conversations are continuing over on the Senate side, at least amongst the rank and files, about would you see a standalone ACA vote as a cave? And what is your advice to those rank and file members right now?
What we have repeatedly said as House Democrats is that we will consider anything in good faith that is sent over to us from the Senate in a bipartisan way. But it has to have a path toward decisively addressing the Republican healthcare crisis, beginning with an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Thanks.
So who's lying, Chad? Because Mike Johnson says that the Democrats are asking for money for healthcare, but they're lying, right? And then the Democrats say that the Republicans are trying to slash healthcare, not in half, but basically kill it. So who's lying? It's hilarious going back and forth every day watching them just pass the blame. It's the Democrat shutdown. It's the Republican shutdown. So just nobody's going to take accountability, right? We're just going to keep listening to them say, it's the Democrat shutdown. It's the Republican shutdown. I'm like, dude, give me a break. All right, guys, so we're going to keep going back and forth bipartisan. We got Speaker Mike Johnson. He actually joined Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Smith. So let's take a look at their conversation. Shout out to Speaker Mike Johnson. This is from his channel. Shout out to Stephen A. Smith. Hey, like it or love it. Like it, love it, or hate it. We're listening to it. So just be respectful in the chat. Be cordial. You know if you're not, you're going to get kicked out or timed out. So for the sake of just staying in the chat, just keep it cool.
In history, he is Mr. Mike. And now I have one of his colleagues in the House with me. He is the Speaker of the House. My guest has served as the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives since 2023. He is now the man at the center of the longest government shutdown in American history. He is Mr. Mike Johnson, and he's on the show with us right now. Speaker Johnson, it's an honor to have you, sir. How are you?
Stephen, it's great to be with you. Congrats on the new show. It's still kind of new, I guess.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to be on later tonight with our good buddy, Sean Hannity. I'll tell him you said hello.
Well, my condolences, because he's crazy. I wish you all the luck in the world when it comes to that guy. But let me get right to it. First of all, when is this shutdown going to end, Speaker?
I wish I could tell you. Really, the only person that can answer that is Chuck Schumer, because he leads the Democrats in the Senate. And as you know, because you're keeping the score, they voted 15 times now to keep the government closed. 15 different occasions. They've made it the longest in history. I don't know if that was the objective all along, but real pain is being felt by real people, and it's getting more and more painful by the hour. We've got to break the impasse, but here's the thing, Stephen, as you know, because you're tracking this, we sent them a totally clean, nonpartisan CR. I know that sounds like legislative speak to people back home, but what it means is we found the simplest possible measure. It was only 24 pages in length to just keep the government in operation so that we could finish the appropriations process, the government spending bills for the year, and negotiate what remained on the calendar for the end of this year. Healthcare was one of those things. There were lots of issues, but this is the way it's always been done. And the Democrats always have done it in the past. They did it 13 times during the 4 years of the Biden administration, but now suddenly they wanted to pick a fight because they had to show that they were tough to what I think is the Marxist rise in their party, and they're running scared because of that.
I was getting ready to ask you, verbally speaking, not anything they hint towards anything. What do they actually say is the reason they haven't signed the CR?
Well, they claim that this is a fight about healthcare, but it's not true, and everybody here on the Hill knows it's not true. What they're trying to say this is about is the expiration of the Obamacare COVID-era subsidies. It expired.
Okay, so if it's the expiration of that, we know that doesn't expire till the end of the year. I think that doesn't expire until like December 29th or like December 31st. It's literally at the end of the year.
At the end of December 31,
okay,
not the end of the fiscal year, September 30. So they needed something to claim that what this was about, and they globbed onto that. It's not legitimate. It's not real. We were always planning. Every Republican and every Democrat in the building, Senate and House, knew that we were going to have to work our way through that complex issue in October, November, December before the end of the year. They tried to claim that it's about that. That's not. That's a red herring. That's a distraction. The real reason, and this is just the honest truth, is that Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are both from New York. We saw what happened in New York City last night. We see the rise of the activist kind of socialist base in the party. It terrifies the old guard here on Capitol Hill. And both of those guys are concerned they're going to get a challenge from a Mondani disciple in their next election cycle. So they had to show a fight. They had to pick a fight, and this is one they chose.
What about the notion that they did this and they've been holding out because they knew that the election was coming up and that it would look as if the GOP was the ones that were most culpable in all of this, and it would work for them in the election? I think it stands to reason that might have had something to do with it when you consider the fact that Zohran Mamdani just won the mayoral seat in New York, and obviously you got Sherrell and Spanberger that won the gubernatorial seats in New Jersey and Virginia, respectively.
Yeah, look, but there were no surprises last night. I mean, blue states and blue cities elected blue candidates. I mean, that was what everybody expected, frankly. Anything else would have been a surprise. I don't think we should read too much into the results last night or into the results of any off-year election, because they almost never indicate what will happen in the upcoming year. We know the big contest is the midterm elections next fall. We are very bullish about that on my side of the aisle because we have a lot to show. We've got a great record to run on. We've been delivering on our promises to the people. And Stephen, in the last election cycle last fall, we had a true demographic shift. I mean, a real historic shift in the electorate where we had a record number of Hispanic and Latino voters and Black and African American voters and Jewish voters and union workers, all these demographics. And we're going to prove to them they made the right choice, and they'll have time to evaluate that before next November, and I think it's going to go well for us.
I'm wondering how concerned you are that you are going to prove that, because I'm looking at the president right now like, listen, I've seen the tariff wars. I mean, there's pledges, but they ain't guarantees. I don't disagree with what he did with the border, because I never thought Biden should have opened the borders. So I'm going to be on the record right now, I don't care how unpopular it is. I agree with him. I understood. Once Biden opened the borders, you got to do something to close it. You can't have all of that happening. Not in this country. We get that part. But I also know that the manner in which it's been handled, particularly by ICE, you know, in terms of people being grabbed in the streets, everybody's not criminals. Everybody's not here illegally. And I think the optics and how bad it has looked has served to scare some of the American citizens that the level of chaos that exists in the streets of America right now, to some degree, could somehow, some way mirror what we saw during his first term, and that kind of scares people as well. I want to know, those people like yourself and others, have you thought about that? Have you talked to the president about that?
Yes, look, we're aware of the optics, and we're trying to do the right thing by the American people. That's the promise we made last November. The president ran on it. The border, the open border, and the chaos that it created, as you know, was really the #1 issue in the election last fall. And we went out and promised that we would bring order back to the chaos and that we would fix that. We would stand for the rule of law. If you don't have a secure border, you don't have sovereignty as a country, and everybody understood that. We checked the box. As you know, Stephen, I mean, we've had almost 0 illegal alien crossings over the border in the last several months, and that's because we have a commander-in-chief who's taken it seriously. And now we have to deal with the estimated roughly 20 million people who came across that border unlawfully. Now, you got to do it in the right way. We want to go after the hardened criminals and get them out of the country. That's like a 90%, poll of the issue. But you got to be careful about maintaining the rule of law, ensuring that people are following it. And the White House is well aware of that. We are too. But I would say this, and comparing the two parties as we go into the next election cycle, we really do have a split screen. I mean, just consider the last 9 or 10 months, the beginning of this Congress, the beginning of the new administration. On one side, you got President Trump and the Republicans, and they're delivering for the people. I mean, we solved the border crisis. We're trying to solve the crime crisis in creative ways. We cut taxes. We cut regulations. Fraud, waste, and abuse in government. I mean, we got American energy dominance going again. We got new trade agreements more favorable for the country, and the president is solving wars around the globe. He's up to 8 or 9 now. And on the other side of the screen, you got the Democrats. And what can they say they've accomplished in 9 months? They shut the government down. They pushed some ICE officers around. They inspired political violence. I mean, this is not hyperbole. This is the real comparison between the two. I like our chances going into the election because we're working for the people and we can show it.
We're talking to Republican out of Louisiana, one-on-one Speaker Mike Johnson right here with Stephen A. on Straight Shooter with Stephen A. Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene appeared on ABC's The View on Tuesday. She said she blamed you, sir, for not bringing the House back into session, calling it, quote, an embarrassment. I guess the question would be, why won't you call the members back? And number 2, how do you feel about what she directed directly at you?
I'm not unaccustomed to hearing criticism from Marjorie. We have intense fellowship, as we see in the Deep South, Stephen. And she knows I've got an open door. She can come in and talk with me anytime. But, she goes on these shows. She likes to get the big interviews, and that's fine. Everybody has the right, But I'll tell you this. I'm in constant contact with all the House Republicans. And the reason we've not brought them back yet is because we did our job. We passed the clean, nonpartisan, continuing resolution on September 19th. And we're now waiting for the Senate to do their job. Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have held off on that. They voted against it. They don't want to open the government. And so we can't do anything until we fulfill that most basic function. I mean, that's the most basic responsibility of the Senate and the House of the Congress, is to make government work for the people, to keep it open, to keep the services flowing and the troops paid and all the rest. And so that's the first order of business, and anything else is just a side issue. So I will tell you, I have a weekly conference call with all the House Republicans, and I talk to them more often. 99.5% of all the House Republicans understand exactly what we're doing and why. Marjorie has a difference of opinion. That's up to her.
But why is it that you're sounding like there's absolutely nothing you can do? Like there's nothing you can do? I mean, if the Democrats don't agree with this, this is what it is. The government's going to be shut down, and there's absolutely no recourse that you have available to you in your arsenal at all. You or President Trump, who I call the art of the deal. I do that facetiously because I'm getting on him. I can do that. I've known him before he became the president. The art of the deal, the guy that can make a deal, that can figure out a way to get a deal done. Where's that guy with all of this right now while federal employees are not being paid?
I'm glad you asked. I mean, he is the great deal maker, and he tried before this began. Remember, we had that fateful meeting where Leader John Thune in the Senate, I, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, the two Democrat leaders, we all went to the Oval Office. He brought us all in, and we sat right across Resolute desk. And the president tried to make a deal with those guys. And he said, guys, don't close the government down. It doesn't help anyone. It hurts the American people. And they just basically gave him the middle finger, Stephen. I mean, that's what happened. And so they walked out. The president said, these guys don't want to make a deal. They want to shut the government down. And that's what they've proven over and over. So you're asking me why I'm not negotiating right now? Here's the simple truth. There is nothing that I can pull off of that continuing resolution to make it more palatable for the Democrats. Because guess what? I didn't put a single Republican partisan priority or policy on that measure at all. In fact, Stephen, this is so important. This CR, this continuing resolution, continues the government funding at the current levels, which is the Biden era policies and spending. I mean, literally, it's the Democrats' stuff that they're voting against. So there's nothing I can do to go make it better. I have nothing to negotiate. I literally don't have anything I can pull off of that. And that's the whole problem here, again.
No, there's people that's going to look at the Republican side now, not just the Democrat side. Because you got people think they have an agenda. They wanted to, they wanted the voters to show that they have voters' remorse for voting Trump into office. They wanted to use this for the election and gain an advantage. There's a whole bunch of reasons that people throw out about the Democrat side. On the Republican side, people look at y'all and they say, you know what, the American public are going to question the level of seriousness that you guys have about governing, accusing y'all of grandstanding to some degree. How are you going to answer the American public as those sentiments grow in your direction?
Well, we've done the opposite of grandstanding. I mean, I have a live press conference every single morning, and I go out in front of the American people, and Fox News carries it live. Other stations do as well. Every morning, we take questions from the press, and we just look straight into the camera, Stephen, and tell them the simple truth. The truth is very simple. We have laid bare all the cards. Everything's out on the table. We gave a simple, nonpartisan measure to keep the government in operation so Congress can do its job here and finish everything else. I don't have a political strategy. I'm not playing a game here. I'm just trying to keep the government in operation. It's the Democrats who are engaging in this campaign of misinformation and doing this. And I know it sounds like a he said, she said thing, but the American people are smart, and they can watch the tally. They can watch the scoreboard. 15 times House and Senate Republicans have voted to open the government. 15 times Democrats have voted to close it. And I mean, that's the score. That's the reality, and that's the thing they can't get around.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Representative Jordan about specifics in regards to the finances. We can talk all day. The Affordable Care Act, subsidies, they're going to double, the premiums are going to double, etc. We've heard all of that. That's us talking. We're not the Speaker of the House of Representatives. You are. Paint the picture. Obamacare, what it cost then, what it was supposed to cost, what it ended up costing, what we're anticipating it's going to cost, really to articulate and illuminate the urgency of dealing with this healthcare crisis we got in this country. Could you paint a financial picture, the numbers, throw it out there for my audience to hear so we can understand?
Yeah, I will. It is a crisis, and it's not created by Republicans. I mean, that's the biggest political gaslighting in the history of America. Remember, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is exactly the opposite. It's been the Unaffordable Care Act because from the time it was enacted in 2010, by most estimates, premiums have been risen by 60% in most categories. I mean, healthcare is unaffordable, and it's increasingly inaccessible because the system doesn't work. And the Democrats' response to that is to subsidize. Stephen, when the government is subsidizing something, it means it's not working on its own. They got to prop it up. Well, they want to extend the COVID era Obamacare subsidy, which is really a subsidy to insurance companies. And you know what happens when you subsidize insurance companies? It drives the cost up even further. So we need real reform to make healthcare affordable again, to increase quality, increase access to care for more people. The Republican Party is the party trying to do it. We're the only ones that have ideas on the table to do that. The Democrats just want to keep doubling down and spending more tax money to prop up a broken system. I'll give you a quick example. This is not just talk from us. We did it. In the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Families Tax Cut, in the House version that we passed and sent over to the Senate, we had what's called a cost sharing reduction, a CSR provision in there. It would have driven, according to the Congressional Budget Office, not Republicans, it would have driven the average premium down in America by 12%. And it would have saved taxpayers about $30 billion over 10 years. The Senate Democrats fought to take that provision out of the bill, so it didn't make it in the final legislation. By comparison, okay, remember I said that would have dropped prices, premiums by 12% and saved about $30 billion. If you extend the Obamacare subsidy, the COVID era subsidy, as they're trying to do, without any reforms, it will only reduce premiums by about 5.7% on average, and it will cost the taxpayers $358 billion in additional dollars. Look, we have real ideas to fix it. We've actually published booklets full of ideas. We got to build consensus around it, and it's a very complicated thing because healthcare is very complicated. It's a big percentage of the U.S. economy. We have to do it right, and Republicans are the ones that will lead us out of that wilderness.
Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks, sir. SNAP benefits are being cut in half, as we all know, but they're talking about how it'll take weeks or even months for recipients to get them. Can you explain why that is?
Yeah, it's a great question. The easiest way to stop all this chaos and get SNAP benefits rolling right now is for Democrats to come in here tomorrow and vote to reopen the government. But if they don't do that, we're relying upon a contingency fund. Here's the problem. It's math. It's about $9 billion a month to cover SNAP benefits. We got about 42 million recipients on that, right? There's only $5.2 billion in the contingency fund. So you got about half of what you need. So in order to get to even use the contingency fund, as the courts have ordered to be done, the states have to recalculate and adjust their systems to send out partial payments. It's not going to be enough. It's going to be a long lag time to get that done because it's an unprecedented situation. And that's why we're appealing to the Democrats. Stop causing the pain. Just get the government open. We're not asking you to vote for any Republican priority. We're just saying, do what you have always done. Do what you did 13 times during the Biden administration. And Chuck Schumer and 10 Democrats in the Senate did as recently as March of this year. Chuck Schumer himself went on the floor, Stephen, and gave an impassioned speech. Said, we have to do the CR. We have to keep the government open because—
This is last March.
Yeah, this was March. This is like 8 months ago. Yeah, and the same guy now.
So what's funny about that is that around that same time, Chuck Schumer's book was about to come out, right? And he actually pushed back the release date on his book because he was getting so much flack. Because if you guys remember, the government was about to shut down in March, and then he did what they're saying. He went on the floor, and he's like, we cannot shut down the government. And they were playing all these clips over the years when the Democrats were like, the government has to stay open. We can't ever shut it down. Now, I'm bipartisan, so we always watch both sides. But isn't it interesting that in March, when Chuck Schumer's book was about to drop, he went on the floor and he said, there's no way that we can let this government shut down. We cannot let that happen. And now, just a couple months later, the government is in this longest shutdown in history. I don't think that's just a coincidence. What do you guys think?
Dug his heels in and says we can't reopen. I mean, it's a 180. And again, the only explanation is that he's worried now. He's more afraid of the radical rise of the base in his party than he is making people go without food. I mean, that sounds harsh, but that is a reality.
If Donald Trump were not president, would this be happening? What I mean by that is that the last time there was a shutdown this long, it was his first term. Now it's happening in his second term. And you guys, I see you guys religiously calling it deranged, Trump deranged syndrome or something. There we go. So I'm asking it based off of that flavor, the kind of things that y'all have been saying. If Donald Trump were not president, do you believe that the Democrats would be this rigid in their thinking, in your estimation?
No way. No, I mean, that's the whole point, is they're trying to show that they're willing to fight Trump to their base, and they'll pick a fight over anything or nothing. Some people call this the Seinfeld shutdown because it's really about nothing. I mean, that's the whole point. But I can tell you this is my exhibit A in my case that I'm making to you. We don't do this. I was speaker under President Biden. We did not shut the government down. I mean, I got a lot of pressure from my angry part of my base to do it, but it would be too dangerous for the people. And we were going to do the right thing. We're not going to make troops go unpaid and TSA agents and Border Patrol agents and air traffic controllers. We're not going to stop SNAP benefits and nutrition supplements for women, infants, and children. We wouldn't do that. So we took tough votes. We voted for Biden policies and spending spending because we care about the people. And the Democrats are demonstrating every day here, they have a very different priority, and it is themselves and their own political survival. That's what this is about.
Speaker, before I let you get on out of here, I'd be remiss in neglecting to not ask you this question. You haven't sworn in Arizona Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva yet. Why do you have to follow the Pelosi president? Because I heard you allude to that. A lot of people think that you guys, particularly you by name, are stalling when it comes to this. What do you have to say to that?
We're not stalling. I mean, that precedent is not just hers, it's previous speakers as well. What happens here is that when somebody's elected in a special election, that's what she was, she fulfilled the seat of her late father, which is a great honor to her. You wait until you're back in regular session to do it. I cite Pelosi because she did it a number of times. Like, for example, when they had special elections filled during an August recess for Congress, she would logically wait until the next month when everybody came back to get into session to do it. I'm anxious to administer the oath to her, and we will, but we got to get the lights turned back on here first and get Congress open and operating for the people so that we can get all this done. We got a lot ahead of us. There's no other objective here. I'm just trying to follow the regular order. By the way, she can serve her constituents in every capacity right now. She's got a full staff. She's got offices and computers and phones, and she can be doing what everybody else is doing right now as the rep-elect until we just go through the formality of administering oath.
But what she can't do is go on the Hill and vote as a member of the Democratic Party to have the Epstein files open, which is what people bring up as a reason as to why she hasn't been sworn in yet. To that you say what?
Yeah, it's another red herring, total distraction. It's a moot point now. Look, the House Oversight is doing a full, in-depth investigation, and they're delving through the Epstein files and releasing them. I mean, people have lost track of this. There's 43,000 pages of that stuff out in the public on the website right now. 2 Fridays ago, a little over a week ago, they released the latest Epstein estate files, which is his personal logs, his calendars, his flight records, flight logs, his financial records, and all the rest. We've got subpoenas that are being supplied, answered right now, and the more the information comes in, the more it's released. The only thing that's being redacted right now is the names of young women, the victims, the victims who went through these horrific crimes as a result of these sex trafficking operations. And we have to protect them. But that's the only thing that's being withheld. So it's all out there, and more is coming. And I can tell you, the House Oversight Committee is filled with some of the biggest guard dogs in Congress on the Democrat and Republican side. And they've got their teeth sunk into this thing deep. So it's already happening right now. I mean, that's just a non-issue.
Very last question for you is regarding the filibuster and President Trump. I saw him speaking this morning, and he wants it eliminated in the Senate. He's basically saying that's the only way anything will get done in order to pass, the record-breaking number of bills and circumvent Democratic obstruction, as he called it. What are your feelings about that, eradicating the filibuster and just moving forward without needing 60 votes? What are your thoughts about that?
He and I have talked about this a lot, and what you're hearing is an expression of his anger and frustration that the Democrats won't reopen the government. He doesn't want the American people to hurt. We don't either. And desperate times call for desperate measures. But I reminded him that what a lot of the Senate Republicans believe, that's not a House issue, it's a Senate issue, but what they believe is that it's a very important safeguard against the worst impulses of the Democrat Party. My Republican colleagues will say that because they say, sir, they've already told us what they would do without the speed bump of the filibuster. If they ever took over again, they would expand the Supreme Court, back to court. They'd go to 13 or 15 judges or whatever they wanted. They'd make Puerto Rico and DC states. They would do Second Amendment restrictions. They would nationalize federal elections. Just go on and on and on, and there'd be nothing to stop them. And so I think the fear on both sides of the aisle, to be fair, has kept the filibuster as part of the tradition. The founders intended the Senate to be what they referred to as the cooling saucer, right? But the House would be hot, lots of activity, lots of emotion, and it would go over there, and it was supposed to simmer and cool so cooler heads prevail in the Senate. If you take the filibuster away, that doesn't exist anymore. And we would have massive whiplashes for the people between elections, between the parties, and that wouldn't be good for the system.
Speaker Johnson, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I'm going to let you get on out of here and brace yourself for dealing with Sean Hannity because he's...
All right, guys. Next bipartisan person, we're going to Thune and Chuck Schumer. And after that, we're going to get into a little bit of news. But we got to go over here and watch what Thune and Chuck Schumer are saying about the longest ever government shutdown, as if they don't know why it's happening. Both sides know why this is happening. But let's take a listen. Shout out to Face the Nation. They cover this.
Late breakups, crust easy.
I got her a little something.
A little something, Dad?
Hold up. Walt rolled his 401k accounts in.
Instigated this shutdown by rejecting a clean. Mr. President, I move to proceed to calendar number 168, HR 5371.
Clerk report.
Motion to proceed to
That
calendar
hat is epic.
168, HR 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and further purposes.
Mr. President, we are 37 days into an entirely avoidable government shutdown. And I say avoidable, Mr. President, because it was. Democrats instigated this shutdown by rejecting a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution. Republicans weren't asking them to swallow a bunch of new conservative policies. There isn't a single partisan policy in the bill. And yet Democrats couldn't bring themselves to take yes for an answer. Democrats, of course, have claimed their decision to shut down the government's about health care. They want Republicans to bail out their Obamacare mess. And as I've said probably 1,000 times now, Mr. President, Republicans are 100% willing to sit down and talk about the mess that Democrats have created. We're just not going to have that conversation while Democrats are holding the federal government hostage. That was our position in September. That was our position in October. And yes, it's still our position in November. We're just waiting for Democrats to take yes for an answer. Mr. President, I do know that Democrats have been under a lot of pressure from the far left. The far left pushed them to shut down the government. And the far left has pushed them to keep it shut down. As one House Democrat told Axios yesterday, and I quote, "There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out," end quote. There would be hell to pay if Senate Democrats don't let events play out. That quote from a House Democrat just yesterday. Well, Mr. President, what events need to play out? What more needs to happen for the far left to be satisfied? The pain this shutdown has caused is only getting worse. 40 million Americans who rely on food assistance programs are now at risk of going hungry without a resolution to the shutdown. I'm sure these Americans are doing everything in their power to feed their families, but they can't do that forever. Federal workers have now gone without pay for more than a month, including the people in this building. Will the far left not be satisfied until federal workers and military families are getting their Thanksgiving dinner from a food bank? Because that's where we're headed. And then, Mr. President, there's air travel.
I keep forgetting about that.
Yesterday, the Transportation Secretary announced that as a matter of safety, the Department of Transportation is requiring mandatory reduction in air traffic starting tomorrow because of shutdown staffing issues. That means widespread flight cancellations, supply chain issues, hundreds of thousands of passengers dealing with disruptions to travel every day. The impact this will have will be immense. And all of it because Democrats cannot bring themselves to accept a clean, nonpartisan funding resolution, something that happened 13 times when they had the majority and President Biden was in the White House. So I ask the question again, Mr. President, what more do Democrats need? They got their cheers at the left-wing No Kings rally. They kept their base satisfied through the fall campaigns and election day. And as of Tuesday, they have the extremely dubious honor of instigating the longest and most severe government shutdown in history. How much more do Americans have to endure before Democrats are satisfied? Mr. President, the Democrat leader said yesterday that every day gets better for Democrats. The number 2 Democrat in the House has said that the American people's suffering takes a back seat to Democrats' precious leverage. And the senior senator from Vermont, a leading voice on the left, wrote an op-ed over the weekend calling for Democrats to keep the government shut down forever, as far as I can tell.
That's ridiculous.
Mr. President, I hope that's not where most Democrats are. I hope at least a few Democrats can see that this can't go on any longer. People are suffering, and it's getting worse every day. A furloughed federal employee, a mother of 5 in Maryland, told the New York Times last week, and I quote, "I don't know how to get the mortgage paid," end quote. Federal workers are taking on second jobs to make ends meet. Food banks across the country are overwhelmed. And American families are looking to the holiday season with apprehension.
Well, that's the worst part of all.
Mr. President, Democrats have a choice to make.
I know a lot of
Are they
people
going to continue to
stressed
bow
about
to pressure from voices on the far left telling them to keep up their opposition? Or are they going to stop the American people's suffering and end this shutdown? I hope enough of them are willing to do the right thing. And I hope they do it soon. The American people can't wait for events to play out. Mr. President, I yield the floor. And I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk, call the roll.
Yes. I ask unanimous consent the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
So, Mr. President, Americans plagued by high costs fired a political torpedo this week at Donald Trump and Republicans. They spoke loudly and clearly. We are fed up with the high cost of living. We're fed up with the tax on health care. We're fed up with your broken promises. And the question now is, will Donald Trump and Republicans listen to the American people? Will Republicans finally work with Democrats to reopen the federal government and negotiate a fix to the ACA premium crisis? Will Donald Trump finally take a break from his lavish ballrooms to help families who can't afford the rent, can't afford health care? The American people are waiting, and Democrats are ready. We want to have negotiations. It's been long enough. Look, if Republicans were smart, they would get the message after Tuesday that their do-nothing strategy isn't working. Even Donald Trump knows Americans hold Republicans responsible for this mess. Here's what he said. The shutdown was a big factor. He was talking about, why did you lose the election? He said the shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. Again, Donald Trump's words. The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans. That's what he said about the elections Tuesday. This is probably the smartest thing President Trump has said in a while. Donald Trump clearly is feeling pressure to bring the shutdown to an end. Well, I have good news for the president. Meet with Democrats, reopen the government, fix the ACA crisis. That's the best way to put this crisis behind us. And I will say something else about what happened on Tuesday. The single biggest worry Americans feel right now is the cost of living. If you could boil down the theme of Tuesday's elections down to one word, it was affordability. And Republicans absolutely whiffed on that by focusing on everything but affordability. In fact, Republicans have governed all year like drunken sailors. Instead of lowering costs, they plundered healthcare into oblivion. They've cut taxes for billionaires while kicking millions off healthcare. They've approved luxury jets for cabinet officials and acted as if there were zero consequences for their actions. After spending all year intoxicated on right-wing policies that do nothing to lower costs, Republicans shouldn't be surprised that Tuesday hit them like a bad hangover. And now that Tuesday is over, we're suddenly reading all these stories about how Donald Trump is finally going to start getting serious about messaging on affordability. One story said it's going to be the big focus for him next year. Wow. Where's this guy been? What fantasies is he living in? And are we supposed to applaud Donald Trump now that he's finally going to focus more on affordability? And he says on messaging, the American people want results, not a message that brings no results and produces no progress. Apparently, Donald Trump even said on Bret Baier's show that Republicans aren't doing a good job talking about affordability. No kidding. That would be putting it kindly after everything they did this summer to make life affordable to billionaires. So look, if Donald Trump really wants to get serious about affordability, here's a free tip. He should work with Democrats to actually make health care more affordable. Not he say he wants to do something vacuously. We should extend the enhanced ACA premium credits, which Senate Republicans voted against 3 times. If Donald Trump has any interest in keeping his promise to lower costs, he should maybe focus more on fixing health care than sending billions to Argentina and trying to win a Nobel Prize. The American people have spoken. It's time Republicans finally listen and work with Democrats to bring this shutdown and health care crisis to an end. I yield the floor.
Another day in the longest U.S. government shutdown in history, and here's your headline at this hour. The Senate not currently scheduled to vote on a measure that so far has fell flat 14 times. So just yesterday, President Donald Trump put pressure on Republican senators at a breakfast meeting. He said, look, get the government reopened and scrap what is known as the filibuster. So what's that? That's the threshold that requires 60 votes to advance most legislation. Even Republicans say they don't have a stomach for that. Meanwhile, Americans are feeling the effects of the shutdown as they travel throughout the week. You are seeing what a lot of people are seeing when they go to airports. You saw that screen there, delayed, or canceled. Headaches are expected to only get worse for you as you travel tomorrow. The federal government plans to reduce airline traffic by 10% at 40 locations starting tomorrow. And we're talking about some of the most busy airports in the United States. FAA Administrator Brian Bedford says the reductions are driven by issues of fatigue that our flight controllers are experiencing. Regulators are focused on slowing traffic in specific markets, but not the whole country. So Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has warned Americans about the inconvenience this reduction will create.
We have seen staffing pressures throughout our airspace. Those who travel will see that we've had more delays. We've had more cancellations. I anticipate there'll be additional disruptions. There'll be frustration. We are working with the airlines. They're going to work with passengers. But in the end, our sole role is to make sure that we keep this airspace as safe as possible.
U.S. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy there explaining, but a lot of travelers may find this a bitter pill to swallow. CBS News reporter Karen Waugh joins me now from George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston. Houston's, we understand, will be part of that major reduction in air traffic. So how are airlines getting passengers ready for tomorrow?
Hey Reed, good to be with you. So the plan is to gradually ramp up to these cuts, starting with something like canceling 4% of flights tomorrow, Friday, ramping up a little bit more over the weekend, and then by next week, about 10% of flights will be canceled. So that's how they plan to slowly get from one place to another. But let's take a look at this misery map we have on your screen of the 40 busiest airports that will be impacted. It includes, yes, Houston, Bush is here, but other major hubs like Denver and Atlanta, all 3 airports servicing New York City and all 3 airports servicing Washington, D.C., those will be affected as well. The main goal of these cuts ultimately, as Trump officials say, is to alleviate pressure from the understaffed air traffic control workers who've been working without a paycheck since mid-October. And of course, not having enough air traffic controllers could mean safety concerns as more planes are taking off and coming in.
Right. I've heard reporting that United and American Airlines are trying to mitigate the harm to travelers as much as they can, in some cases offering refunds if people are eligible. But what are you hearing from the traveling public? I imagine people who are going out today know that coming back home is going to be a little bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, so people who are flying out today, they got lucky. You can see behind me, this is mostly no lines, pretty calm, pretty clear. But like you mentioned, coming back may be a different reality depending on what point we are in those airspace cuts. If they're coming back next week and they're among the 10% of flights that are canceled, that's of course not going to be good news. And depending on how long this goes on, the Thanksgiving holiday, one of the busiest travel times of the year, that's just right around the corner as well. And of course, people don't want to be delayed or canceled when it comes to getting to spend family time. So a lot up in the air right now. Lucky travelers today, but that luck may run out by tomorrow.
Yeah, their return flights will be no fun. Thank you so much for showing us that map. That just shows us where those pain points are. Karen Hua, always good to talk to you. You have a good day.
Hi, everybody. That's kind of crazy because sometimes we could get so caught up in all this stuff happening with the government that we just forget what's happening in real life. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this is going to be frustrating because it is so close to the holidays. Like, people are probably already frustrated about Thanksgiving. They're probably already frustrated about, Christmas. And it's like, they're already thinking about food and how they're going to make it and the government being shut down. And it isn't even the holidays yet they're right around the corner. So, yeah, this is pretty stressful, including putting the holiday season on top of everything that's going on. All right, guys, moving along. Let's go to the Young Turks. Let's take a look at Nancy Pelosi's retiring and what she said. We'll watch a little bit of this clip.
Own a vacation rental? If it's not listed on Booking.com, it's invisible to millions of travelers on our...
Speaker America.
I say to my colleagues in the House all the time, no matter what title they have bestowed upon me, Speaker, Leader, Whip, there has been no greater honor for me than to stand on the House floor and say, I speak for the people of San Francisco. I have truly loved serving as your voice in Congress, and I've always honored the song of St. Francis. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, the anthem of our city. That is why I want you, my fellow San Franciscans, to be the first to know. I will not be seeking re-election to Congress.
This morning, the Speaker Emerita, the Representative Nancy Pelosi, the first and second and only female Speaker of the House, announced she will not be seeking re-election next year after serving nearly 40 years and what will be 40 years in Congress. TYT has had, a quixotic relationship with the Speaker over the years. So, Cenk, I suspect I know your 2 cents, but we'll have lots to say.
Yeah. Down goes. All right, hold on. So we're going to talk about my former colleague, Shirkat Chakrabarti, who was running against her. Do I think that was part of it? A little bit. Do I think that Zora Mamdani winning was a little bit of a part of this calculus? Yes. The incumbents for the first time feel vulnerable. In my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen Democratic incumbents feel vulnerable. And so, in primaries. And so I think that this is a bellwether change. And yes, we'll debate Pelosi's career.
Yeah, I think Nancy Pelosi was always going to step down before she even knew Shokat's name. But I just think the timing of this was 40 years in Congress, and that was it. But we'll get to that. And that doesn't really matter. We're talking about her career, what this will mean for the Democrats, why it happened. Nancy Pelosi is 85 years old. She was first elected to Congress in 1986, I guess. She started serving in 87. She served as a Speaker of the House following 2006 and the 2018 elections. Her announcement comes 2 days after she helped California Governor Gavin Newsom pass Proposition 50, which we now all know will redraw the state's congressional maps ahead of next year's midterm elections. According to a person familiar with fundraising efforts in that race, Pelosi herself raised tens of millions of dollars for Proposition 50. In her video announcing her retirement, a piece of which we just saw, she reflected on her many roles in the U.S. Congress.
For decades, I've cherished the privilege of representing our magnificent city in the United States Congress. It seems prophetic now that the slogan of my very first campaign in 1987 was, "A voice that will be heard." And it was you who made those words come true. It was the faith that you had placed in me and the latitude that you have given me that enabled me to shatter the marble ceiling and be the first woman Speaker of the House. As we go forward, my message to the city I love is this: San Francisco, Know your power. We have made history. We have made progress. We have always led the way. And now we must continue to do so by remaining full participants in our democracy and fighting for the American ideals we hold dear.
So the speaker leaves having, in 40 years, you get a lot done, especially when you become the Speaker of the House, a lot done for her own district, a lot done, as she said in her video, a lot done for the country. So here's some more from the Speaker Emerita.
It was an historic moment for our country, and it was momentous for our community, empowering me to bring home billions of dollars for our city and our state. With these resources, we have powered enormous progress for healthcare, from the fight against HIV/AIDS to the Affordable Care Act. For transportation, extending BART, electrifying Caltrain, creating the 3rd Street Light Rail, and a central subway, and strengthening our iconic Golden Gate Bridge, all creating good-paying jobs. We can be proud of what we have accomplished, but there's always much more work to be done. Of course, San Francisco's impact is not confined to our city limits. The Affordable Care Act, Wall Street reform, human rights abroad, and so many other priorities all sprang from the vision, values, and voices of San Franciscans. Because of your trust, I was able to represent our city and our country around the world with patriotism and pride.
Yeah, she always hewed very closely to being the representative from San Francisco. And as she said there, none of it inaccurate that she, maybe romanticized, but not inaccurate that she did do a lot for the city. When you are in leadership, it's a lot easier to do that when you're the speaker, even more so. She did also, on the Golden Gate Bridge, she put in those suicide barriers on the Golden Gate Bridge. She had those put in. She took the Presidio and turned it into a national park. So a lot was done for San Francisco, as she mentioned. I don't think, Jink, we would have the Affordable Care Act in the same way. I don't think it would have passed the same without her having shepherded that through. And I think that's probably her biggest achievement as a member of Congress. Though she did have the Lilly Ledbetter Equal Pay Act, she had the Child Care and Paid Leave Act. She was also instrumental in human rights. And finally, she stood up to China. She went to China and held up signs to commemorate the people at Tiananmen Square. Like her first, maybe it was her second term in Congress, she put in environmental restrictions so that developers around the world had to abide by a certain set of environmental barriers, let's say. But I think, stepping away from that, I think that we saw, and I said this about Mitch McConnell too, we got to see Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, who I think, forgetting what you think of their politics or their party or their personalities or anything, in terms of doing those jobs, they were both excellent at the job of both speaker and majority and minority leader in McConnell's case. I despise Mitch McConnell, but he was certainly pretty crafty at getting done what he wanted to do. I think the same for Pelosi. She was able to hold together her caucus against Donald Trump in that first term in ways that I don't think many leaders would. And of course, I can't speak for what, I'm not a woman, I don't have daughters, but I know that she inspired a lot of women to break that marble ceiling the way she did. There were 24 women in the U.S. House when she got there. Now, the U.S. House is 30% women. And so they're not all Democrats. They're not all there because of Pelosi. Some of them are there in spite of Pelosi. But I do think that her record in that regard is exceptional.
Yeah. So, look, first of all, you got to give credit to her for bringing the glass ceiling, the marble ceiling, etc. First female Speaker of the House, role model for people, showing that you can do it. No question, she gets a ton of credit for that. She gets credit for everything she did in San Francisco. The Presidio is beautiful, etc. I got no beef. And I don't want to speak too ill of the retired, because I get on Pelosi's case a lot throughout the years, but that's because we're in the middle of a heated battle. And she always represented the establishment and was always against progressives. So I got every right to oppose her. She opposed us her entire career. But now that she's retiring, less relevant, right? So I don't do this out of spite, but out of, making sure that you all know what actually happened, right? So all the things that Michael said are true, but two things can be true at the same time, and context matters. And context actually It doesn't help her in one way, but then at the end, I'll tell you about how it helps her in a different way. So when you look at the context, okay, so the one major bill was Obamacare, right? And Obamacare, they had the House, they had the White House, and they had the Senate sitting at one point in the beginning, they heard 60 senators filibuster-proof, then 59 senators. So you really, if you say, hey man, my major accomplishment is passing a bill that, by the way, didn't go anywhere near all the way, didn't go to universal health care, didn't even go to a public option, but just mandated that you buy from private insurers, but made the system a little bit better. When I had 59 senators and had the House comfortably, and obviously she's the Speaker of the House, I want to be nice, but I just don't believe that's like some magnificent accomplishment.
It is an extraordinary, it is historic, it is the biggest congressional legislative accomplishment that you've been alive for, I would say, but maybe not alive for, but certainly
it's one of the biggest. Yeah. But
and to do that, it's not a low bar. I mean, like we changed healthcare. She changed healthcare in America, along with President Obama, along with the people on the staff, along with members of Congress, and it didn't go far enough. It didn't do enough, but it took something, put it in place, and now no one in America wants it taken away. That is a rare and enduring thing to do.
So I'm giving her credit for that one bill, which I think was stunningly easy to pass.
It wasn't easy to pass. It wasn't even easy to pass. I mean, it wasn't easy to pass because she had a caucus that was large but divided. She had pro-choice members of that caucus that didn't want to vote for it because of there wasn't enough for abortion.
Health insurance money. Okay.
Well, but wait, come on,
you tell me.
She's the Speaker of the House, and they passed monumental health care. The Speaker gets credit for that.
Okay, I'm trying to give her.
It's never a low bar to change the way things are done in this country.
So what I dream about, Michael, is that an ally of mine that I think is really earnest and strong and wants to do it gets in a role like that. I really want to show the country what you can actually get done.
And that person would have a hard time doing that. I hope that happens for you. That person would have a hard time doing it. It would be hard because getting anything through Congress is difficult.
No, you break their legs politically and rhetorically. You say, here's the corrupt son of a bitch taking away your health care. Here's a corrupt son of a bitch who created higher drug prices. Yes, that corrupt son of a bitch is in my own party, but not for long.
We have to talk
because
about
I'm going to definitely destroy his career for supporting corporate donors who are destroying your lives with these high drug prices. But of course, a Democratic in her era would never do that.
You have to talk about anybody's era when you're talking about it. I mean, it's the real politics of the time. It's a divided caucus, and it's. I mean,
okay. So hold on, I'm going to come to that. Okay, so
if you're saying you want to happens, fantastic. But that won't be under Nancy Pelosi's watch.
I'm getting to that. Yeah. Okay. So now the rest of her career. I mean, she mentioned only 3 things nationally. Wall Street reform. They did half a reform. The other half was so bad that they were going to put Paul Volcker's name on it, who's a conservative from back in the 1970s and 80s that ran the Fed. And by the end, he's like, no, it's so conservative and corporate and establishment, I don't want it. I don't want it. And then he accompanied it with a giant bailout of the bankers, including their bonuses, okay? And then she said, oh, human rights abroad. And there's some truth to that. The things that Michael said are true. At the same time, when the Palestinians wanted some human rights, Nancy Pelosi didn't care about them at all. And she helped to send more money to crush them and to further this genocide. So human rights for some, but not for all. So in a 40-year career, you got one big bill passed when you had almost the entire deck stacked in your favor. And you got half or a quarter of Wall Street reform in 40 years.
Wait a second, you didn't just get one bill passed, and that wasn't her bill. She was the Speaker then. There were, from TARP, from AIDS and HIV relief. AIDS and HIV relief is the model for countries around the world, and that was crafted. I mean, it does go to her being from San Francisco, obviously. It was crafted by Pelosi and Boxer, who was her colleague in the Congress at that time, went on to be a senator from California. So these are things that she did that have lasting and enduring, and how many members of Congress leave with legislation with their names on it. Nancy Pelosi isn't leaving with legislation. She's leaving having been Speaker who shepherded these things through at a time that it was not easy to do that. She also she went up against George Bush big time with the Iraq War, was a foil to him, was somebody who had that Iraq War resolution and made sure that everybody was opposed to it, and wasn't able to get it there. During the COVID relief, the Trump administration had to pull Steven Mnuchin out of negotiations with Nancy Pelosi because she was getting too much COVID relief. And the Trump people were like, oh, we need to send somebody who isn't Steven Mnuchin. I'm just saying, this is her as a leader. This is her as a speaker. And
that's the good, bad, and ugly. That's why I appreciate the Turks, because they wanted to look at it from a broad perspective. The good, bad, and the ugly. Some people are really sad that Nancy Pelosi's retiring. I'm not so much... But that's because I don't like some of her dealings with like the stock market and inside trading and stuff like that. Like, it's been pretty crazy over the years. But yeah, there are a lot of people. She's been in government a long time, just like Biden was, 40 plus years. So she's beloved by a lot of people. That's what I said. Like her, love her, or hate her. There's a lot of people that love her. So a lot of people are sad that she's retiring. But hopefully now the Democrats will let some of their younger leaders step up, because they are very big on keeping the OGs in place. Let's just say that. They don't really like to usher in any new blood. So let's just see what happens now. All right, so we're going to go over to Bakari Sellers. Shout out to him, CNN host. Big wins, blue wave, what the latest election results really are. They had Ben Shapiro on CNN, so I thought this was going to be hilarious. He's been on there before, but it's always fun to watch. So let's take a look.
At ShopRite, we are here for your... This Sunday, we need to get every tailgater a Pepsi to amp up the food's flavor.
Blue wave swept across the country in key races last night. Voters sent a direct message to President Trump, voting in big numbers. Tonight, the day after a blue wave, Trump weighs in.
Remember, I said we will never have a socialist elected to any post in our country. We skipped socialist and we put in a communist instead.
Not true, but Mike Johnson is doubling down, saying it's coming to a town near you next. Are Republicans just mad and missing the message? Plus, shutdown turnaround?
It would be good to open it up, take care of the people with jobs that aren't going to get paid and aren't getting paid.
Are Republicans willing to go nuclear and end the filibuster in the Senate to meet Trump's demands? Also, supreme skepticism.
One of the most important cases in the history of our country.
Trump's tariffs argued before the highest court in the land. What it all means. Live at the table, Ben Shapiro, Anna Kasparian, Isabel Brown, and Bakari Sellers. Americans with different perspectives aren't talking to each other, but here they do. Let's get right to what America is talking about, the path forward. Tonight, Democrats are doing something rare these days. They're celebrating big wins across several states. Republicans are now in the blame game. A blue wave swept across the country in key races last night. Voters sent a direct message to President Trump, voting in big numbers for Democrats up and down the ballot and electing candidates across the party's ideological spectrum. It was the first major electoral test of Trump's second term, and he's not too happy with what happened. He spent his day outwardly running through what could be described as the classic stages of grief.
If you want to see what congressional Democrats wish to do to America, just look at the result of yesterday's election in New York, where their party installed a communist as the mayor. All we want is voter ID. You go to a grocery store, you have to give ID. You go to a gas station, you give ID. But for voting, they want no voter ID. It's only for one reason, because they cheat. Well, let's see how a communist does in New York. We're going to see how that works out. And we'll help them. We'll help them. The shutdown was a big factor, negative for the Republicans.
But some Republicans, including his vice president, are shrugging off the wins. J.D. Vance saying it would be idiotic to overreact to a couple of elections in blue states, and House Speaker Mike Johnson echoing that sentiment.
there's no surprises. What happened last night was blue states and blue cities voted blue. We all saw that coming. And no one should read too much into last night's election results. Off-year elections are not indicative of what's to come. That's what history teaches us.
All right, we have a great panel here. I want to start with this idea because I was thinking about it as everyone has been talking about where the Democrats are going, looking across these races. So I guess the question, and I'll start with you, Bakari, why can't the Democratic Party be both Mamdani, and who is an outward Democratic socialist, he says it himself, and Spanberger, who is more moderate? Why can't that be the Democratic Party and stop saying, well, we're going to be this or this?
I mean, I think the Democratic Party is that, what you said, and it is a big tent, and that tent does have those somewhat, as you kind of dictated in your question, extremes. But I also want to push back on the framing of that, because that framing is more in line with what J.D. Vance was talking about. That framing is more in line in what Donald Trump was talking about. Somehow people perceive that this was an election that just happened in New York City. And God forbid to all my New Yorkers that life happens outside of there. But the fact is, we kicked Republicans' ass not just in New York, but we beat them in Mississippi, where we actually broke the supermajority. 2 public service commissioners won, not 1, but 2 statewide in Georgia. We beat the last Republican city council person in Orlando, Florida. We actually took back the mayoral race in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So not only did we just win in Virginia and New Jersey and New York, where people want to make this race about, we went up and down the ballot. Now, is this just a snapshot of time? Maybe. I don't want to get out over my skis. But let's not make it seem like we just won in blue places. We won all over the country.
Ben, to you, are Republicans missing something here? Because you are hearing some Republicans who are saying, this is not a big deal. This just happened, as you just heard, in blue states. Everybody just calm down.
Well, I mean, I think that this is the launch of the midterm election cycle, obviously. And as Bakari says, Republicans did not do well last night. And it's also true, obviously, that Democrats were very likely to win in Virginia or New Jersey or New York. But obviously, if Republicans don't take into account the fact that this is now a Republican-owned economy, and that this is a Republican-run country. I mean, the Republicans do run both House of Congress and the presidency. And so if there's a backlash, it's going to obviously happen to the Republicans. And that is always the most likely scenario. I mean, I think that the question is going to be margins. Right now, there aren't that many vulnerable seats, actually, in the House. The number of challengeable seats is extremely limited. So I don't think you're going to get a wave that's 40, 50 seats, because I'm not sure that's possible anymore, given redistricting and given the big sort that's been happening. But for Republicans not to take some alarm at the fact that, obviously, these exit polls, which are showing economy still as the number one concern and inflation still as the number one concern. If they don't take that seriously, obviously there are going to be some serious effects in there.
There are 2 points I want to.
And this is where everybody's kind of like, oh, the Republicans are going to get kicked out. Like, we knew this was going to happen, but we have to remember, like, and people are running straight to the fact that President Trump's favorability rating is dropping. And I'm saying to people who are asking me, even when I'm at my place of work, I'm like, listen, as long as the economy still feels expensive, as long as things still feel high to people, his favorability rating is going to go down. That's inevitable. The Republicans, like Ben Shapiro said, they are controlling the country right now. So if there is any backlash, obviously it would be towards the Republicans.
Make along the same lines that Ben was making. This probably will be the only time we agree.
Y'all are agreeing on
Start off with a bang here. But yes, we have to think about the fact that, take Virginia, for example. Every single county in Virginia swung to the left. Every single county, not just one. And we're talking about 2, 3, 4, sometimes 15, 16
okay, but
points.
Virginia's a
swung
blue
to the
state.
left.
Like,
in
who
Georgia,
doesn't know that?
what you saw around Atlanta, Fulton County, Gwinnett, Cobb, I mean, those folks came out to vote. And so you're starting to see those things. And last but not least, the issues that were at the forefront, and Democrats have to realize this, the issues that were at the forefront, like you said, were the economy, affordability, 1. Number 2, health care. A distant third was immigration. You know what was not in it in those top 5 or 6 issues? These culture wars, which Donald Trump pulls us down in, and we can never win them.
And usually I think the Democratic Party takes the bait, and this time around they didn't. So I think the Virginia governor's race is a good example of that. You know, you have Winsome Earl-Sears kind of focusing part of her campaigning on the transgender issues. Spanberger didn't focus on that, and she did focus on affordability, and I think it helped her win that gubernatorial race. But I will say this, you know, I'm glad that Ben is pointing out to the fact that, yes, economy is top of mind for most Americans. And what I heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson and from Vice President J.D. Vance is a lot of what I heard from Democrats in the lead up to to the 2024 presidential election, when immigration was definitely something that Americans were concerned about, and crime, and they pretended like, nope, doesn't exist, it's all made up, it's just right-wing fear-mongering. No, you need to listen to your constituents, because your constituents are the ones who are concerned about
Well, in
this.
fairness, I don't think the vice president or the speaker of the House were saying these issues don't matter or they don't exist. That
But it's
certainly isn't
downplaying
what
the
they were
results of this
saying. They're
election.
explaining that it's an off-year election and that Republicans didn't necessarily feel the same impetus to go vote as we likely are going to see in the next presidential election and certainly in the midterms coming up next year. So I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization.
Well, Trump is underwater when it comes to pretty much everything, including immigration, by the way. But Larry Kudlow today was shocked at how underwater he is when it comes to the economy. 61% of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of the economy. Don't underestimate how much of an impact that's going to have on the midterm elections.
And even the voters that, the fraction of black male voters that people were looking at in the 2024 election, all those voters came back home. And the biggest flop you saw last night, or flip-flop, however the word is said, was Hispanic voters. So all the gains, it looks like every gain that Republicans made in 2024 through immigration policy reform that people don't like what they're seeing on TV or whatever it may be, they lost all of that last night. Now, again, Democrats, one of the things we like to do is run victory laps that last like 365 days. I mean, you have to figure this out because this isn't the only headline today. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we're literally in 36 days of a shutdown. And people are extremely, they're hurting right now. And that hurt was what we saw in the election last night.
I mean, I think the biggest thing in all of this, and I think you saw it, Trump winning over Biden, I think that you're seeing it now, is that people don't like the status quo. And after they change the status quo, they don't like the new status quo. Because the reality is that all these problems that are now deeply embedded in very real ways in our economy, for example, things like the national debt, things like the fact that we've had, enormous pressing by the Federal Reserve for a while here, and in both directions. First, it was too slow to react in one direction, then it was too slow to react in the other direction. All of this is leading to just a systemic unease that everyone has with everything. And whoever gets elected next, I mean, good luck to Zoran Mamdani, because he's not going to be able to solve all the issues that he is talking about, certainly not with the policies that he is currently proposing. And then he's going to be the one on the chopping block.
I do want to ask you, Anna, because young people voted in very large numbers, particularly in the mayoral race here in New York, and they were part of the change that happened here with Zoran Mamdani sort of sweeping into office with over 50% of the vote. But I want to talk about what we've been hearing from the president and some others in the Republican Party who keep calling him not a socialist, democratic socialist, which he has said he is, but a communist. And there are big differences between the two. That scare tactic did not work when it comes to Mamdani. And socialism, some people will look at it and say, look, we have some socialist programs here in the United States, things like Medicaid and Medicare, things like, the SNAP program, things like public school, where we all pay taxes, but even if you don't have kids get to go to school for free. What sort of is the idea that Republicans have that this is a communist and that they can keep pushing this idea when people
certainly
keep rejecting it?
Look, there is a fundamental difference between outright socialism, where the government seizes the means of production and tries to artificially control the market, which we've seen many, many times play out throughout human history, and social welfare programs. Having social welfare programs available in a country does not inherently make your society a socialist society. Just last night, we talked about the thriving economies over the last several years of Scandinavian countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, that on the economic index freedom scale are actually more capitalist than the United States of America, have far more free market opportunities for people who live there than even we do here in the United States. Where I think there is a valid criticism, and what's going to be interesting to see if this can even play out here in New York City, are these very radical ideas with extreme expansion in government, stuff like state-run grocery stores or taking over housing here in New York City specifically with the decommodification, as we saw specifically campaigned for by Zoran Mamdani on the campaign trail, where the government will plan to go in and purchase private housing in the quest to make housing more affordable here in the United States. I think that's an interesting policy idea. It certainly is prescribing the wrong solution, but for an accurate complaint, right? People are struggling to afford life here in Manhattan and around our country. We all reasonably should be coming to the table with solutions for this, but is more government involvement the solution? Time and time again throughout human history, the answer has been no, and I think we have the scorecard to prove that.
This isn't about
It's about rent freezes.
No, it's not even about that.
Well, there was an ad put out by Mamdani advocating for that, so I think let's be honest.
Let's be extremely honest about what this is. Republicans had Barack Obama, who is now a little long in the tooth, and he's on the sideline. They had Kamala Harris, who is now recuperating from a race. They had Joe Biden, right? They do extremely well with picking a boogeyman out, and that is what they're doing. I mean, we cannot fall for that. I mean, they're simply otherizing Mamdani. They're saying whatever they want to say.
And it's not working though. That's the thing. Like
but
the
I
more
mean,
they
he's
attack him, the
But I
more.
mean, it's like, it's a refreshing.
Otherizing just responding to his own
calling him a
campaign
jihadist when he's not
Yeah.
a jihadist. That's a good example.
But I mean, also, for every Zoran Mamdani, there is a Mary Sheffield, right? There is somebody else who you can see. She's the first black mayor of Detroit, Michigan, where young people came out in large swaths and voted for.
So then the question becomes why they're focusing on Mamdani, and I think the answer is because of Mamdani's own words. If you watched his victory speech last night, he used one line in particular that sort of left out and left off the screen when he said that there is literally no problem. This was his line. There is no problem too big for government to solve, and no matter too small for government to care about. I mean, that's what totalitarians would say, is that they're literally, and then the two people he quoted verbatim, aside from Mario Cuomo, which was I thought a delightful little slap at Andrew. I thought it was a little nasty. But he quotes Eugene V. Debs, who's a socialist, and then he quotes Nehru, another socialist, and then he says, "I am a socialist" from the stage. So saying that President Trump is somehow going overboard when he has campaigned as this, when the Democratic Socialists of America, which is a base from which he springs and to whom he answers in many ways, is openly socialist.
But the president has been
he said on this network he hates capitalism. He said that on this network.
But the president's been calling him a communist, not a socialist.
Why don't you explain what you think the difference is?
There's a big difference.
What is the difference?
99.99% of America did not watch his speech. 99% of America literally don't care who Eric Adams is or Cuomo is or who the mayor of New York is. But what is happening, though, is Democrats do something that we don't normally do, which is harness the energy of young people. And Zoran Mamdani had the issue that carried the day yesterday. Everything else, set aside everything else about how you feel. He talked about affordability in a way that communicated to voters and resonated. But Zoran Mamdani is a part of the future of the Democratic Party. He's not the face of the Democratic Party, or he is not the Democratic Party.
Well, something to also keep in mind is, calling him a socialist didn't hurt him in this election, because if you look at Democratic voters, many of whom live here in New York City, they are super skeptical of capitalism.
Sure.
Because of the crony capitalism they've been dealing with. They don't see a future for themselves in this country in terms of being able to afford a house, be able to get married and have children. So young Democrats who were very much galvanized by Mamdani's message were not put off by his message of socialism. They liked it. And that's something important to keep in
But
mind.
Republicans are not campaigning in New York against socialism. They are campaigning nationally
Yes.
against socialism. And what they're saying is that the Democrats, don't fall for the bait, is I guess what I'm saying to you guys. I shouldn't give you, I hope you fall for the bait, but don't fall for the bait of making Mamdani the face of your party, because the reality is that Abigail Spanberger won by a larger margin in Virginia than Zoran Mamdani won in New York last night. And by the way, he was running against another Democrat. Okay, that's how much he was disliked, right? I mean, he was running Andrew Cuomo, who's a deeply unpopular person in New York, won 800,000 votes in that race last night because there were so many Democrats who didn't like Zoran Mamdani. Right. So this idea that Zoran Mamdani is overwhelmingly popular across the if you include a country that includes half of Republicans, not a city like New York, where perhaps 7 people are Republicans and like 3 of them voted for Curtis Sliwa in the end. I'm sorry, it's not a representative sample. It's like saying that AOC is representative of the broad spectrum of American politics, and she isn't.
No, she's
Fair
not.
enough. All right, coming up next.
Absolutely not.
Your multivitamin for immunity support, so you never miss a beat. One a day, the one for you.
This is my super stylish Brin sofa for only $5.99.
And this is the gorgeous matching love seat.
All right, guys. It's about that time in the live stream. Every single time we end the live stream with a Christian clip. So I know all of the demons in the chat, y'all are about to leave, right? Because now I'm going to put something on about Jesus. So y'all are going to leave. Every single night we end the live stream with a Christian clip. I pick different people. Last night I had John Bevere. Tonight I'm using John Bevere again. Yesterday we talked about holiness. Tonight he's talking about how to have a healthy fear of God. Okay, so I'm a Christian. I'm very outward about my faith. I love people even if you hate me. I don't care if you hate Jesus. I care even less. He still loves you. So I'm going to play this clip. I'm not going to play this in its entirety. I'm probably going to play about 15 minutes of it because I want you to go to John Bevere's channel. He's a pastor and he also has a podcast. He's been a pastor for many years. He's not a young guy, even though he looks great. but I want you to go to his channel and watch it. So all the demons in the chat, you feel free to watch if you want, because you know the Bible anyway. But the people who do not yet know Jesus, this is for you. So shout out to Pastor John Bevere.
And in this...
Okay, where do I want to start? Let's start about right here.
Walked away from the faith. Half of those 40 million are now... My heart is deeply burdened for the church in America. Barna has done a study. In the last 23 years, over 40 million Americans have walked away from the faith. Half of those 40 million are now professing agnostics, atheists, and spiritualists. 2 Thessalonians tells us in the last days that there's going to be a great departure from the faith. But what the Bible doesn't say is that those people that have departed, they won't come back. I believe they're going to come back. John the Baptist was sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I believe there's a bunch of people in here, you're going to be sent to the lost sheep of the church. Amen. What has caused this great departure? I believe that we have a gift given to us by God that we've ignored, and that gift is called the holy fear of God, the holy, healthy fear of God. Isaiah 33 verse 6 makes this statement. It says, there shall be stability in your times. What creates that stability? The fear of the Lord is your treasure and his. Now I want you to look at this closely. The fear of the Lord is God's treasure. What do we do with treasure? We protect it. We put it in safes. We hire security companies. We have alarm systems. We put it in very, very safe places. The fear of the Lord is God's treasure. It's not only ours, it's God's. Now, when you speak of the fear of the Lord today, we're talking to a culture that's tried to eradicate fear. I mean, in the 90s, we wore t-shirts that said no fear. We wanted to abolish it because we hated anything to do with fear. But is all fear bad? The answer is no. I mean, you know, the healthy fear of not messing with a grizzly bear cubs will preserve my life. That is wisdom that will save me.
Amen.
The healthy fear of not just balancing over a 2,000-foot cliff drop is a healthy fear that will keep me from going to an early death. But there is a fear that eradicates all other fears. And that fear is called the healthy, holy fear of God. Now, the first question we've got to ask is this. What is the fear of the Lord? Let me say this, students, and I want you to hear me before you automatically just shut me down. The fear of the Lord is not to be scared of God. Okay, when Israel came out of Egypt, do you remember Moses led them out? Students, let me ask you, when Moses brought Israel out of Egypt, where were they going? Everybody yell it.
The promised
land. The promised land. No, that is not right. What did Moses say to Pharaoh 5 times? Thus saith the Lord, let my people go that they might worship me in the wilderness. Why does Moses want to bring them to a promised land before he first brings them to the promiser? If you bring them to the promised land before bringing them to the promiser, they're going to make the promised land into a place of idolatry. See, I see an amazing thing. I look at Israel, they're abused by Egypt. They have stripes on their backs. Their babies are put to death. They are working all their lives to build somebody else's inheritance. They are eating the worst, the slum. They're living in the slums. Yet they come out of Egypt, and you know what they constantly say? Let's go back to Egypt. It was better for us back in Egypt. I look at Moses. Moses is raised in the wealthiest man's house on the planet. His grandfather, Pharaoh, is the richest man on earth. He lives in a castle, a palace. He can do whatever he wants. He can have every Lamborghini in the collection. He can have every Harley he wants. He can throw a national party anytime he wants. But he comes out of Egypt, and Moses never once says, it was better for me back in Egypt. Why? Because he had one encounter with God at that bush, and he wanted Israel to have the same. And so Moses brings Israel straight to Sinai. And when he does, he goes up to the mountain and has a private meeting with God. And God says to Moses in Exodus 19, he says, Moses, go down and tell the people the whole reason I delivered you from Egypt was to bring you to me. He said, I have called every one of them to be a kingdom of priests. God wanted every one of them to be able to approach him personally. And so God said to Moses, tell them to get ready. And part of the process of us getting ready is he said, for the next 2 days, tell them to wash their clothes. Get the filth of Egypt off of you. Because I'm coming down. And before I ever revealed myself as a loving God, I first revealed myself as a holy God. And in the center of that holiness is my love. And so when God comes down on the mountain, I mean to tell you, these people, they run from God. Why? Because they've got a little bit too much of Egypt still in their hearts. And Moses is utterly confused by their response. And he looks at them in Exodus 20:20, and he says, do not fear, because God's come to test you. What's the test, Moses? To see if his fear is in you so you may not sin. Now look up at me, everybody. Do not fear, because God's come to test you. What's the test? To see if his fear is in you. Well, wait a minute. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Do not fear because God's come to see if his fear is in you. Moses is differentiating between being scared of God and the fear of the Lord. There is a difference. The person who is scared of God has something to hide. What does Adam do as soon as he sins? He hides from the presence of God. The person who fears God has nothing to hide. He or she is terrified of being away from God. So if you want the first definition of the holy fear of God, it is to be terrified of being away from him. This is why the Bible tells us, by the fear of the Lord, one departs from evil. Back in the early 1990s, there was an evangelist who was one of the most well-known men on the planet. He had the largest ministry in the world in the 1980s. He was a fiery preacher. And he was arrested because of mail fraud and sentenced to 45 years. It was reduced to 5. I was asked to come and visit him. And when I visited him, I will never forget, he came into the waiting area. He hugged me and wouldn't let me go. And then he said to me, we have so much to talk about and we only have 90 minutes. The first thing he said to me is, he said, John, this prison was not God's judgment on my life. It was his mercy. I went, oh my gosh. Now I'm looking at probably one of the most infamous people in the world right now. CNN covered his trial every day, his arrest, everything. And he told me how Jesus had delivered him from all of the evil in his life his first year of prison. He was in his 4th year now. And when I got comfortable with him, I said, hey, I have a question. At what point did you fall out of love with Jesus? When did you stop loving him? Because I remember when you started, you were so on fire. You wept when you preached. And he looked at me and said, I didn't. I said, no, you didn't understand what I just asked you. When did you fall out of love with Jesus? At what point? He said, John, I didn't. Now my walls are back up because I don't know this guy. And I remember I said to him, you committed adultery in 1983, and I named the person. And you're going on with all this mail fraud for 7 more years before you're arrested. And you're telling me you didn't love Jesus? Are you telling me you loved Jesus all the way through this? He said, John, I loved him all the way through it. Now he sees the confusion on my face, and he said, John, I didn't fear God. He said, there's millions of Americans just like me. They love Jesus, but they have no fear of God. It is by the fear of the Lord that one departs from evil. So what is the fear of the Lord? The fear of the Lord is to stand in awe of him. It is to honor, tremble, revere, esteem, respect, value, venerate him more than anything or anyone else. When somebody fears God, we will love what he loves and we will hate what he hates. You say God hates? Yes, he does. Now, let's show you the legalistic version of the fear of the Lord. This is why we ran from it as a church. I fear God, that's why I hate those sinners over there. Now, you don't fear God at all because you hate what he loves. He loves those sinners so much, he died for them. What he hates is the sin that unmakes that person. I remember in the 1990s, I was praying every single morning for 2 hours. I'd get up at 4:45 religiously every morning. I'd go out to an outside place, usually it was a golf course, and I would pray till 7 in the morning. But yet when I would stand up and preach, my words were like boing, 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 boing. There was no power, no unction, no anointing. And I was really getting frustrated. And one day I went to the Lord and I said, God, I don't get it. Why isn't there a stronger anointing on my life? And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said, because you tolerate sin. I went, what? You tolerate sin, not only in your life, but in the lives of others. And then he told me, he said, read Hebrews 1. Now, Hebrews 1 is when God the Father inaugurates Jesus as King of the universe after his resurrection. And in Hebrews chapter 1, I read this in verse 9, I believe it is. It said, because you have loved righteousness. And the Holy Spirit said, stop, every Christian loves righteousness. He said, but that's not all I said. Because you loved righteousness and hated, not disliked, not tolerated, hated lawlessness. Therefore God, even your God, has anointed you more than your companions. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said, learn to hate sin the way I hate sin, and you'll see the anointing of God increase upon your life. So what is the fear of God, or what is the awe of God? Number one, it is to tremble at his presence. Number two, it is to tremble at his word. I'm going to briefly cover this in the next couple of minutes. What does it mean to tremble at his presence? Psalm 89 verse 7 says, God is greatly, everybody say greatly, to be feared in the assembly of the saints and to be held in reverence by all those around him. Now look at the second part of this verse. God is to be held in reverence by all those who surround him. Let me say this, write this down. You will never find God in an atmosphere where he is not held with the utmost of respect. I'll never forget when I first learned this back in 1997. For the first time in my life, I was asked to the nation of Brazil. I was so excited. It was a national conference, and I was the Friday night speaker. I fly down, I pray most of the day in the hotel room. They pick me up, they take me to service. Well, I remember that was back in the days, oh, did I hate those days, when they put the speakers on the platform. Okay, during worship, I'm sitting on the platform. Can you believe that? I know most of you never even saw that because you're too young. So glad we got delivered from that. Anyway, so I'm looking at this arena. It wasn't an auditorium, it was an arena. And there are thousands of Brazilians. This place is jam-packed. It's a national conference. And I'll never forget, the worship team was unbelievably gifted. And yet I'm standing on that platform and there isn't a drop of the presence of God in the whole place. Now, you understand what I mean by that? The Bible talks of two types of his presence, his manifest presence and his omnipresence. His omnipresence is the presence of God that says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. That's the presence that David said, if I go to the highest mountain, you're there. If I make my bed in the lowest parts, you're there. But the manifest presence, Jesus said, I will manifest. Manifest means to bring from the unseen into the seen. The unheard into the heard. The unknown into the known. It's when God reveals himself to our senses. That presence was totally absent in that arena. And so I closed my eyes. I said, God, where's your presence? And all of a sudden, when I opened up my eyes, I noticed something I didn't see before. I noticed people standing there during the worship, like looking around like this with their arms crossed. They had their hands in their pocket looking down. I saw a lot of people talking to one another. I saw people coming out of the high places and going down and going and getting the concessions and going back to their seats with the tacos or the Coke or whatever it was. And I'm like, this will stop. But it doesn't. The worship set's over. All of a sudden now one of the leaders of this big movement in Brazil walks up and starts reading from scripture. And I'm now, because there's no music, I hear a mutter of the people talking to one another. So now I'm sitting there in absolute disbelief. And the Holy Spirit speaks to me and said, you got to address this. So I'm like, how? Nobody's even listening. So he gave me an idea. So I walk up, I get introduced, I walk up to the podium, and I just sit there and stare at everybody. And I don't say a word. My translator's looking at me like, what are you doing? And when you're the Friday night guest speaker and you're introduced and you're not saying a word, you're just glaring at people, that will get their attention. All of a sudden, all the muttering stopped. Every eye in the place was on me. And I said, this is the first words I ever spoke in public in Brazil. I have two questions. I didn't say, hey, thanks for having me. Love being here. I said, I have two questions. Question one, you're talking to somebody sitting across the table, and the whole time you're talking to them, they got their arms crossed looking around as if they're disinterested, or they're whispering to the person beside them. Would you continue to talk to them? They said, no. I said, what if every time you go to your neighbor's house and when he opens the door and sees you, he goes, oh, it's you again. Will you go in? I said, no. I said, I have been in this arena for an hour and a half, and there is an ounce of the presence of God here, because God will never manifest himself in a place where he's not held with the utmost of respect. I said, if the president of your nation would have walked on this platform tonight, he would have gotten 10 times the respect you gave the Holy Spirit. I said, if Pele, your greatest soccer player in the history of Brazil, would have walked on this platform, you would have been on the edge of your seats anticipating every word. I said, you've given no respect to the Spirit of God. And I preached them for 75 minutes on the holy fear of God. At the end of the 75 minutes, I said, if you're in here and you say you're a Christian, because it was a believers conference, I said, you say you're a Christian, but you say you lack the fear of God and you're willing to repent, stand up. 75% of the arena stands up. As soon as they do, the presence of God comes in, people start weeping. I lead them in a prayer of repentance, they're weeping, and the Holy Spirit said to me, I'm coming one last time. And there's no way of describing this. Ever can I do this justice, but I'll try. But imagine standing at the end of the runway at Birmingham International Airport and a Boeing jet takes off in front of you. That kind of a violent wind came blowing into that arena. When it did, the people erupted. Erupted. Now, can you imagine thousands of Latinos screaming? I mean, that's loud. The wind was louder. And I remember I'm standing on this platform, and I am petrified, but I'm drawn. I don't know how else to describe it. I am literally terrified, but yet I'm drawn to this presence. The authority was mind-blowing. I had never in my life sensed anything like it. And I remember I'm standing there, and all that's coming out of my mouth is, oh my God. And I remember these thoughts go through my mind. John Bevere, you say one wrong word, you make one wrong move, you're dead. Now, would that have happened? I don't know. But it happened in a church service in Jerusalem when a couple brought an offering and lied about that offering in that kind of presence. They buried them. But I remember, I knew irreverence wouldn't be tolerated, but yet I'm so drawn to this. My head's going, can I handle this? My heart's going, don't lift. And I remember the wind lasted 90 seconds, it subsided, and I'm standing there, I'm like, Lord, what do I do? For like 5 minutes, it's silent, and what do I do? What do I do? And the Lord said, I'm through with you. I said, okay, it's all yours, I said to the leader. So they whisked me out, put me in the car, they put the national singer and her husband in the car. She goes, did you hear the wind? Did you hear the wind? I said, I didn't want to be the first to say it. I said, maybe it was an airplane flying too low over the arena. She goes, what are you talking about? And she starts literally almost screaming at me. And her husband goes, honey, sir, that was no airplane. I said, how do you know? He said, because there were security men and policemen all around the outside of the arena. Most of them aren't even saved. He said, they're union people. When the wind began to blow on the inside, they heard it. They came running in saying, what's going on? He said, I'm at the soundboard, the main soundboard, making sure my wife's levels are right for her singing. He said, the whole time the wind's blowing, the decibel meters were at 0. He said, not 1 ounce of the sound of the wind came through our sound system. I said, my God, take me to my hotel room. And I remember I stayed up till 1:30 at night, just in awe and worshiping. The next morning, you cannot believe the miracles that occurred. Because of one reason. Awe, reverence, holy fear. God makes the statement in Leviticus chapter 10, verse 3, that's a universal and eternal decree. He said, by those who come near me. Yeah, draw near to God and he'll draw near to you. But listen, by those who do come near me, I must be regarded as holy. I'll never forget one day, I used to struggle to get in the presence of God. One day in my prayer closet, I didn't sing, I didn't pray, I didn't say anything. I just thought about the awesomeness of my daddy. I thought about the fact that he put the stars in the heavens with his fingers and called everyone by name. I thought about the fact that he weighed every drop of water on the planet in the palm of his hands. He weighed the mountains in his scales. And all of a sudden, there's the presence of God. And I went, whoa. So the next morning, I thought, I'm going to try that again. Happened again. I said, whoa. Next morning, I said, I'm going to try it again. It happened again.
Nobody likes a cracked windshield.
What was that?
No. And in the center of that holiness is my love. And so when God comes down on the mountain, I mean to tell you, these people, they run from God. Why? Because they've got a little bit too much of Egypt still in their hearts. And Moses is utterly confused by their response. And he looks at them in Exodus 20:20, and he says, do not fear, because God's come to test you. What's the test, Moses? To see if his fear is in you so you may not sin. Now look up at me, everybody. Do not fear, because God's come to test you. What's the test? To see if his fear is in you. Well, wait a minute. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth. Do not fear because God's come to see if his fear is in you. Moses is differentiating between being scared of God and the fear of the Lord. There is a difference. The person who is scared of God has something to hide. What does Adam do as soon as he sins? He hides from the presence of God. The person who fears God has nothing to hide. He or she is terrified of being away from God. So if you want the first definition of the holy fear of God, it is to be terrified of being away from him. This is why the Bible tells us by the fear of the Lord, one departs from evil. Back in the early 1990s, there was an evangelist who was one of the most well-known men on the planet. He had the largest ministry in the world in the 1980s. He was a fiery preacher. And he was arrested because of mail fraud and sentenced to 45 years. It was reduced to 5. I was asked to come and visit him. And when I visited him, I will never forget, he came into the waiting area. He hugged me and wouldn't let me go. And then he said to me, we have so much to talk about and we only have 90 minutes. The first thing he said to me is, he said, John, this prison was not God's judgment on my life. It was his mercy. I went, oh my gosh. Now I'm looking at probably one of the most infamous people in the world right now. CNN covered his trial every day, his arrest, everything. And he told me how Jesus had delivered him from all of the evil in his life his first year of prison. He was in his 4th year now. And when I got comfortable with him, I said, hey, I have a question. At what point did you fall out of love with Jesus? When did you stop loving him? Because I remember when you started, you were so on fire. You wept when you preached. And he looked at me, he said, I didn't. I said, no, you didn't understand what I just asked you. When did you fall out of love with Jesus? At what point? He said, John, I didn't. Now my walls are back up because I don't know this guy. And I remember I said to him, you committed adultery in 1983, and I named the person. And you're going on with all this mail fraud for 7 more years before you're arrested. And you're telling me you didn't love Jesus? Are you telling me you loved Jesus all the way through this? He said, John, I loved him all the way through it. Now he sees the confusion on my face, and he said, John, I didn't fear God. He said, there's millions of Americans just like me. They love Jesus, but they have no fear of God. It is by the fear of the Lord that one departs from evil. So what is the fear of the Lord? The fear of the Lord is to stand in awe of him. It is to honor, tremble, revere, esteem, respect, value, venerate him more than anything or anyone else. When somebody fears God, we will love what he loves and we will hate what he hates. You say God hates? Yes, he does. Now, let's show you the legalistic version of the fear of the Lord. This is why we ran from it as a church. I fear God, that's why I hate those sinners over there. Now, you don't fear God at all because you hate what he loves. He loves those sinners so much, he died for them. What he hates is the sin that unmakes that person. I remember in the 1990s, I was praying every single morning for 2 hours. I'd get up at 4:45 religiously every morning. I'd go out to an outside place, usually it was a golf course, and I would pray till 7 in the morning. But yet when I would stand up and preach, my words were like boing, 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 boing. There was no power, no unction, no anointing. And I was really getting frustrated. And one day I went to the Lord and I said, God, I don't get it. Why isn't there a stronger anointing on my life? And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and he said, because you tolerate sin. I went, what? You tolerate sin, not only in your life, but in the lives of others. And then he told me, he said, read Hebrews 1. Now, Hebrews 1 is when God the Father inaugurates Jesus as King of the universe after his resurrection. And in Hebrews chapter 1, I read this in verse 9, I believe it is. It said, because you have loved righteousness. And the Holy Spirit said, stop, every Christian loves righteousness. He said, but that's not all I said. Because you loved righteousness and hated, not disliked.
All right, shout out to the 47 that's still in the building. Shout out to you guys. I'll be praying for you guys. Thank you for sticking around and listening to the word of God. It's always important to me that you guys do that. We'll be back tomorrow for the daily live stream. If you need prayer at the end of the night, all you have to do in the live stream is just say in the chat, hey, can you pray for me for whatever it is you need prayer for, and I'll take care of it. Or my wife and I will pray with you together. So you just let us know. We'll be praying in spirit, of course, because we're not with you. But we'll be praying with you together on this side. So we appreciate you guys sticking around. I always like when you guys stick around and listen to the word of God, because that's what the channel is here for. Yes, we cover politics. Yes, we cover current events. But anybody who's been on my channel for some time, you guys know that teaching and doing little sermonettes and just bringing the word of God to my channel just to spread the gospel has been the thing I've done almost the entire 7 years I've been on YouTube. So politics and current events, it's newer to me doing it on YouTube, but it's not new to me doing it, period. It's something I've been into for a lot of my life. So I appreciate you guys stopping by. We'll be back tomorrow for the live stream. So until next time, you guys take care of yourselves, take care of one another, love yourselves, love one another, and don't forget to tell somebody about Jesus. Peace.